What's up, everybody? It's your boy Sterling from ENT, and welcome back to ENT Basketball. Now, before we get into today's topic that I want to talk about, go down below, like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell icon, go subscribe to ENT Fantasy Football if you're interested in football or fantasy football. I'll leave a link in the description for that. It's another channel just like this one, but just football. But let's get into today's topic, guys. Now, I wanted to talk about today the Los Angeles Lakers, because we all know the circumstances of this LA Lakers team, and coming into this season, a lot of people were picking them as their finals pick. A lot of people were touting them as a super team, and so with well reasoning, but a lot of people had super high expectations for this team, and as of coming out of the gates, they've been kind of mid, if I'm being honest. They're around 500 right now, or floating around that 8th, 7th, 9th seed range in the Western Conference. But me personally, now I don't want to come out as one of those guys who just says, "Oh, I told you so," blah blah blah, all that stuff. But ever since this Lakers team was assembled, I kind of thought, because I've seen a lot of people picking them as like their finals picks for the Western Conference, their pick to win the finals. I can see that happening, and back then when this team was assembled, I could see that happening too. But my thoughts about this LA Lakers team is I want you guys to kind of pump the brakes a minute, because as they've come out as a pretty mid team, they're mid pack right now, 500 around that 500 range. This is kind of what I expected at the beginning. Now I think that they're one of the top contenders due to the amount of talent on their team that they have. But I always expected this team to come out of the gates and be around this range, because now let's take everything into account. We all know their three stars, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, don't fit together. They just don't. From an on-court fit perspective, they don't fit. They don't mesh well together. All right? But that's also not hurt super teams in the past, right? We've seen three players like this come together, learn how to play together, and their talent will rise above everything. Their talent that they have as a trio will rise up and counteract basically everything, that all the other obstacles, the fit, everything else. So I could see that happening with this basketball team. So they have three players that don't fit together. They also have three players who in recent history have been slow starters to start the season. Russell Westbrook 2 years ago on the Rockets, people were calling for his head, because at the beginning of the season, he was terrible. He was so bad on the Rockets his first few months on the team, till we got slowly more towards the playoffs. He started to ramp up his game, right? They made some changes. They got rid of Clint Capella, went small. Russell Westbrook's game started to elevate. Last year on the Wizards is another perfect example, as the Wizards were literally the worst team, one of the worst teams in basketball last season at the beginning, in the first few months. And Russell Westbrook was bad. Russell Westbrook was terrible the first few months of last season, till eventually his play started to elevate the closer and closer we got to the playoffs. The Wizards ended up barely sneaking into the playoffs last year. So now we have Russell Westbrook, a historically slow starter, and now we have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who in the last few seasons have shown the regular season, they're not too worried about it. They're all right with just losing a couple extra regular season games, kind of coasting a little bit to stay ready, stay prepared, stay healthy for the playoffs. And that's what they've done the last couple seasons. So we have three players who don't mesh well together. They don't fit together from an on-court perspective. We also have three players who are historically slow starters to start the NBA season. Now add this to their role players, who they don't really have a role player to where if one of their three guys is having an off night, that role player can just step up and carry the offensive load. So they're basically leaning on these three guys with a supporting cast who is cool. We've seen some good games from Carmelo Anthony this year. He's like in the sixth man of the year conversations, which is respectable because that's where he should be. He's in those conversations, and that's earned. But he's not one of those guys you're going to give the ball to when LeBron, Anthony Davis, or Russ are not doing their thing, and they're going to say, all right, Melo, do what you got to do. He's just not one of those guys right now. They're basically sticking with these three guys, and that's who they lean on. So I don't really see why it's such a big deal, why people are overreacting so much when this team has come out and underperformed so far, or quote unquote underperformed to what other people had their standards of, which to me was unrealistic. I never thought this team was just going to come out like the Warriors and Suns have and just be like an instant like top tier team, because these guys have never played together. All those factors that I just listed, to me, it just wasn't realistic for these guys to come out and just come out guns a-blazing and going on like a 10-game win streak out the gate like some of these other teams have. It just was never really a realistic thing to me. So what I wanted to tell you guys was pump the brakes a little bit on the Lakers, because they still have three of the best players of this generation who are historically slow starters, historically like to coast at the beginning of the year. So basically, yeah, I can still see. So yeah, let's get into what I could see for the Lakers rest of the season. I could see the Lakers in a month or so, a month, maybe 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks, a month, around that range. I could see them start to ramp up, start to mesh more together, because I feel like people don't understand what it's like for three stars to be playing together who have never played together before. Now, obviously, AD and LeBron have played together, but adding Russ into the mix is such an odd situation now, because it's like all three of these guys are kind of like, do I be aggressive here? Do I be a little bit more timid and pass the ball to this guy? Because these guys are all three guys that you need to be aggressive. You need Anthony Davis being aggressive. Obviously, he has a good three ball. He has a good mid-range. But he's best when he's in that little, like, in the painted area, in the little elbow area, around that area. You don't really want him by the three. That's kind of like a cool addition to his game, but that's not where you want him. Same with LeBron. LeBron can get hot from three every once in a while, but he's not a guy you want taking threes. Russell Westbrook, you don't want shooting the ball at all. So it's kind of tough for these guys to know when to be aggressive, when to pass, and when to defer. So it's just a tough situation for these guys at the start. But I think they're going to start to ramp it up here in like 3 weeks, a month. And I think they're going to end up being a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. That's where I'm going to put them. Top 4 in the Western Conference. So without further ado, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I just wanted to really come on here and talk about the Lakers really fast, just to pump out a video, just to get my thoughts out. And so, yeah, go down below, like, subscribe to ENT Basketball, subscribe to ENT Fantasy Football, leave a comment and all that good stuff, and I'm out of here.